Yo, what is up? I am McChillin. Welcome back to the channel and back to another episode of my tournament breakdown series. In this episode, we're going to be looking at Combo Breaker 2019, the first major from Mortal Kombat 11, and quite possibly one of my worst performances on stream. If you liked my last breakdown, then consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. There's a lot that can be learned from this one, but with all that out the way, let's jump into it. Alright, so this is Combo Breaker 2019, the first tournament of the MK11 Pro competition. So, Mortal Kombat, this game came out in April. You had Combo Breaker in May, CEO in June, and Evo in July/August. And not only are those the biggest tournaments in the FGC, I think they were all qualifiers for the final tournament of the MK Pro competition. And because this is the first one, and the fact that this is in Chicago and NetherRealm Studios, they're based in Chicago, a lot of the players were here. So a lot of players, a lot of competition, a lot of money on the line. Although this is pretty early in the bracket, I think this was either winners semis or winners quarters of the pool. So I'm playing on stream, got a huge crowd behind me, playing against Hayatei, Evo finalist, one of Canada's best players. But I'm not thinking about all that stuff. I think anybody who is kind of new to the tournament scene would have those things in mind, for good reason. But for me, my mindset going into it is I just need to beat this guy. I'm only worried about the person beside me. Every other thing that I just mentioned, I don't really care too much about, or it's like an afterthought. But my initial thought is I need to beat this guy because I want to advance in the bracket. I'm gonna skip. This is just a button check and character select and all that, so let's just jump into it. Got the handshake. Alright, let me say this before the match starts. Before me and Hayatei were about to play, I saw him playing against another player named Gross. And Gross is a high-level player who's been in the scene for a while, but he plays my same character and my same variation. So I'm going into this thinking, damn bro, like, out of all the characters he could have played and everything, he plays a guy who plays my character and my variation. So he's probably going into this thinking like he's kind of lucky because, you know, there's a lot of characters in the cast or whatever, and he's playing against Cassie and Digital Soldier, and that's who I play. So yeah, let's just get into it. Very slow start. Very lame. Yeah, so that's really important. That's a big part of the matchup. I can't throw projectiles at him, especially from full screen, because he has a special move that just completely nullifies it. So this is actually a bad way to start the round. Like, I should not be full screen because there's nothing I can do. He hasn't taken any damage, and he hasn't done any combos, but it's all from chip damage and the acid. So this is very disadvantageous for Cassie, and this is not how you play the matchup. Yeah, I can't do anything, man. Like, I mean, I was a little closer than full screen, but anytime you shoot, anytime you throw something at him, he can just shut it down. So it's like, I wouldn't say it's a bad matchup. It's probably even, but being able to shut down that move, because it's one for best moves, being able to shut that down does hinder her as a character, but she still has other things going for her. She just has to approach the matchup differently. But in the first like 20 seconds, I'm playing the matchup incorrectly. Yeah, so that is why that's one of my worst performances on stream, because, I mean, honestly, that happens to pretty much everybody. Like, everybody has a game or a round where they either get flawless or perfected, or, you know, they barely get like one hit or like some chip damage, but I didn't do anything to him. Like, a lot of his damage at first came from like chip damage from the acid and the gunshots, projectiles, or whatever. And then he opened me up by like, I was letting go of block sometimes because I was expecting him to do like a stagger, and I guessed wrong and I let go of block, and it was a combination of things. But yeah, losing to a flawless victory in the first round of a game, he's got to be feeling pretty good, and I'm just kind of like, fuck man, this sucks, but you know, I gotta play it out. Good defense. Some whiff punishes he's getting. I'm letting go of block a couple of times, so he's. I mean, it's not a flawless, but it's definitely like he's got a pretty clear advantage right now. I'm just standing in the acid. Okay, so let me say this too. I made two mistakes after this first game. I immediately go into character select, which is the first thing. I mentioned it in the last one, the last breakdown, but I would not suggest going straight back into a match. If you lose a game, I would go back to character select, even if you weren't planning to counterpick. I would just take a second, a minute or whatever to slow the momentum down, because going back right into the next game, your opponent has momentum on their side, so you want to slow that down. But another thing is that I should have picked her other variation. I knew how to play her other variation, and like at this point in the game, this was before custom variations. This was back when there were two variations, but there was one that was considered like the better one. And for Cassie, you had Digital Soldier, which had the projectile, and then you had Yas Queen, which had the shoulder charge. That definitely would have threw him off, because you can't use any zoning against Aaron Black. But having the shoulder charge, I have another tool that I can use in the neutral. I don't think it's unsafe. I think he's able to check me if he blocks it, but it's pretty good. It's a good move. And it has a crushing blow too. Cassie's crushing blow game is pretty ass, but having another special that acts as a crushing blow is pretty good. My second mistake was doing that, and I think the reason why I don't go to that other variation is lack of confidence. The game hadn't been out that long, and I wasn't comfortable going for the other variation, because although I knew how to play it, I hadn't played it nearly as enough as Digital Soldier, because Digital Soldier is just really good. But I definitely should have tried it out. I didn't have anything to lose. It would have threw him off, and who knows, like it could have won me like a game or something. So I want to point this out too. So like I talk about how in the beginning I jump back and I'm full screen. If you look at the beginning of this match, like look at our positioning. I got the first hit, and we're in the close to mid-range section. So this is how it should be played. I need to always be around this distance from Aaron Black, because being full screen, there's nothing I can do. But that's a demonstration of like adaptation. I wasn't that prepared for Aaron Black. I didn't have a lot of matchup experience, but after the first game, after I saw that I couldn't just throw projectiles at him, I knew I had to change up my approach to the match. So I tried to be a lot closer to him, and we'll see how that plays out. Like he knocks me back, I get almost full screen, but then I immediately try to close the distance and try to have some sort of offensive pressure on him. A lot of dashing forward. And like, okay, like right there, he did a poke, or it was a string or something. He did a move, and I punished him with I think that was down 4. And that happens a lot where like, it's clear that my fundamentals are good and my spacing is good, but instead of doing a down 4, I probably should have did back 2, which is the move with the shoulder, because I could have gotten a full combo punish, which would have been like 25-30% versus a poke that only gives me like 7-8%. There's a lot of that happens, and I mean, given the space, it may have been possible that my back 2, it's possible that it could have whiffed and I had to do back 4 or down 4, because that was the move that was most appropriate in that space. But there's a lot of situations where My spacing is good, but I choose the wrong move, and that could have been one of those. And I dropped the combo, yeah. So I think this is a great situation or a great example where if I hadn't dropped the combo, I would have gotten a restand. A lot of damage left on the table, for one. Two, I would have gotten a reset, which would have led to more pressure. So I could have threw him. I could have continued my offense. And he's in the corner, so he would have been like on the defensive, and he would have been maybe a little afraid of losing the game. But that one drop was pretty bad. Yeah, it was a big opportunity. And that was a good whiff punish. Yeah, very difficult. So I'm still throwing projectiles at him, but in this situation, I have all my health, and I have a lead, and we're not full screen, so I know that he has to approach me. But even still, if he decided not to, and I decided to zone, which I do right here, he can just still use his move and like counter my zoning. But I think in this situation, it's okay to do it because I have a lead and the positioning calls for it. I'm not just gonna mindlessly keep shooting my projectiles, but I think it's okay as long as you're like doing it sparingly and you're just mindful about the circumstances. Yeah, that string was tough for me to deal with, and it's clear that I don't have a lot of experience playing against Aaron Black because the 2-1-2 that they mentioned, that's catching me a lot. And I'm thinking that he's going to cancel into a slide because Sonic Fox also plays Aaron Black and he does that a lot to trip people up. But I don't think Hayatei, he might have did it once or twice in the set. Actually, I think he might have only done it once, but they'll cancel the string into a slide, which is a low. So a lot of times you see me blocking the move low, and that's why it's clear that like I'm very uncomfortable and I'm very unprepared because that string just keeps clipping me. Yeah, so and that's what happened with that match. So I got flawless in the first game, and the second game was definitely closer. Made some adaptations. I was a lot more offensive, but ultimately like my lack of experience cost me the game. And I think the biggest takeaway from this game is the fact that I remember after this happened. This happened Friday, so I spent the whole weekend just like playing casuals or whatever. But I remember thinking like, oh, the game's only a month old. I didn't know the matchup. Yes, that those things are true, but it's what's also true is yes, the game came out a month ago, but we all have the same amount of time with the game. It's an excuse and it's a valid excuse, but there's no excuse. Like especially if you want to be a competitor, you have to realize that we all have the same advantage. He was prepared for the matchup and I wasn't. I could have spent more time trying to grind out all the matchups in the game, despite only having access to the game for a month. At the time, I used that as a crutch, and even though it's true, looking back, it's clear that my lack of matchup experience is what cost me the game. If I was more familiar with the matchup, then it would have been a lot closer. It's easy to say that, it's easy to use that as a cop-out, but there should be no cop-outs when it comes when you if you want to be competitive and you really want to win, there should be no cop-outs. He outplayed me. He was the better player on this day. Simple as that. That was my combo breaker match. I think after that game went to losers. So that was winners quarters. Put me into losers and loses round 4 and I lose. So I'm knocked out of combo breaker and that's it. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy this breakdown. Hopefully you learned something from this. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch y'all in the next one.